triplets try to sell their doll to save their mother. Then a millionaire appears. The triplets Emily, Olivia, and Ava surprised the neighborhood by setting up a small makeshift stand on the sidewalk in front of their home. At just 4 years old, the girls were offering their precious dolls for sale, the only toys they truly loved and had cherished since birth. "It's to buy medicine so Mommy gets better," they explained, with determined voices and looks that revealed a maturity far beyond their years. Jennifer, the neighbor from next door, stopped in disbelief at the sight. The 3 identical girls in their denim overalls and hair bows held their dolls as if it were the most important mission in the world. "How much for the doll, Em?" Jennifer asked, crouching down to their level. $10, replied Emily, the most talkative of the 3. "But if you need to pay more, it can be more expensive. Mommy needs a lot of medicine." Jennifer's heart ached. She knew Sarah was sick, but hadn't realized how serious it was. She bought a cup of lemonade the girls were also offering, but couldn't bring herself to take their dolls. "I'll call Aunt Jessica," said Olivia, the most sensible of the 3. Noticing more neighbors approaching with pity in their eyes, Jessica, Sarah's sister, had temporarily moved into the house to care for her nieces while their mother was hospitalized. When she reached the sidewalk and saw the little stand, her face paled. "Girls, what are you doing?" she asked, trying to hide her panic. "We're selling our dolls so Mommy can buy medicine," whispered Ava, the shyest of the 3, her voice barely audible. Jessica glanced at the neighbors, embarrassed, and quickly took the girls by the hand, leading them inside. The little ones didn't understand why their aunt was so upset with their plan. "Mommy's sick, we have to help," Emily insisted, as she was guided back into the house. Inside the small yellow townhouse in the Greenwood neighborhood of Seattle, Jessica tried to explain to her nieces that they couldn't be outside alone, let alone sell their toys. What she didn't know, however, was that the triplets had overheard her phone call the night before, when she told her cousin that Sarah's treatment could cost over $50,000, an impossible sum for a family relying solely on a nurse's salary. "You don't need to worry about this," Jessica said, preparing lunch while the girls sat at the table, still clutching their dolls. "Grown-up problems are for grown-ups to solve." But the triplets exchanged identical glances, that silent communication only multiples share. They weren't giving up so easily. The next morning, while Jessica was showering, the 3 slipped out again, this time heading to the neighborhood's Central Park, where there would be more people. Carrying their dolls and a handmade sign with crooked letters reading, "Selling." "To help Mommy." They positioned themselves near the bus stop. Passers-by stopped, moved by the sight of the 3 identical little girls, so small yet so determined. An older man bought a cup of water they were offering alongside the dolls, and a woman tried to give them money without taking anything in return, but the triplets refused. Even in their childlike innocence, they knew they had to give something in exchange. Then a sleek black car pulled up across the street. A well-dressed man stepped out, observing the scene from a distance. Robert Anderson, a prominent real estate businessman, had just left a downtown meeting when the unusual sight caught his attention. 3 identical little girls, each holding a doll, seemingly selling something. Out of curiosity, he approached and crouched down in front of the girls. "What are you selling, little ones?" he asked gently. "Our dolls," Emily replied promptly, "to buy medicine for our mum." Robert furrowed his brow, intrigued. "And where is your mother?" "At the hospital," Olivia answered. "She's very sick and needs expensive medicine." "Very, very expensive medicine," Ava added, emphasizing with a nod. Robert felt something strange in his chest, a mix of compassion and an inexplicable sense of familiarity. "And what are your names?" "I'm Emily, she's Olivia, and she's Ava," the first one said, pointing to her sisters. "We're triplets." "I noticed," Robert smiled. "And what's your mother's name?" "Sarah Williams," Olivia replied. The smile vanished from Robert's face, replaced by shock. That name, it couldn't be a coincidence. "Sarah Williams, the nurse?" he asked, his voice slightly trembling. The 3 girls nodded in unison, surprised the man knew their mother's profession. Just then, Jessica came running over, visibly frantic. When she saw her nieces talking to a stranger, her panic grew. "Girls, oh my goodness," she exclaimed, rushing toward them. "I'm sorry for any trouble, sir. They slipped out of the house. Robert stood up, still dazed by the revelation. "Are you their mother?" "No, I'm their aunt." "Their mother is—" Jessica hesitated, glancing at the girls. "She's unable to be here right now." "Sarah Williams," Robert pressed. "The nurse?" Jessica eyed him suspiciously. "Do you know her?" Robert straightened his tie, trying to gather his thoughts. "I believe so. Could we speak privately?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Jessica studied the well-dressed man warily. Years of caring for children in kindergarten had given her a sixth sense for trouble, and something about this situation felt very off. "Girls, we're going home now," she said firmly, taking Emily and Ava by the hands while Olivia clutched the hem of her blouse. "But Mom, please," Robert insisted. "I need to know if she's the same Sarah I'm thinking of. It's very important." Jessica stopped and turned, scrutinizing the man more closely. He seemed genuinely distressed, not like someone with bad intentions. "She works at University Hospital," she finally said. "She's a nurse in the pediatric wing, or was, until she got sick," Emily finished, clutching her doll tightly. Robert ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that betrayed his nerves. "I'm Robert Anderson," he introduced himself. "Sarah saved me 5 years ago when I collapsed on the street outside the hospital. She was just finishing her shift and gave me first aid until the ambulance arrived. The doctors said I only survived because of how quickly she acted." Jessica's eyes widened, recalling the incident her sister had mentioned a few times. "You're the man from the mall?" she asked, recognizing the name of the businessman who had opened the city's largest shopping center in recent years. Robert nodded. "I tried to find her afterward to thank her, but she never agreed to meet. After I kept insisting, one of the nurses told me she preferred no contact, that she was just doing her job. I respected that, but I never forgot." Jessica's expression softened. Sarah had always been like that, private and uncomfortable with recognition. "She's at Mercy Hospital now," she finally said. "She was diagnosed with a rare heart condition that requires experimental treatment. The hospital's insurance doesn't cover it, and the cost— It's way too high," Robert added, beginning to understand the situation. He looked at the 3 girls, each clutching their doll, their expressions determined despite their young age. "Can I go visit her?" Before Jessica could respond, a woman around 70 years old hurried over. "Jessica, how could you let the girls go out alone?" she exclaimed accusingly. "Someone posted a photo of them on social media and tagged me. I rushed right over." "Mrs. Robinson," Jessica replied, visibly tense. "I was in the shower. They slipped out." The elegant older woman knelt with some difficulty to hug her granddaughters. "Grandma!" the 3 girls exclaimed in unison, running into her arms. Robert watched the scene unfold, sensing the complex family dynamics at play. The tension between the girls' aunt and grandmother was palpable. "Mr. Anderson," Emily called, tugging at the hem of his suit jacket, "are you going to buy our doll to help Mommy?" The question, asked with such innocence and hope, struck Robert deeply. He crouched down again, meeting the girl at eye level. "You know what? I think I can help in a better way, without you having to part with your doll. How does that sound?" The child's eyes sparkled with hope. "Do you have medicine for Mommy?" Robert smiled. "I don't have the medicine, but I can help get it. First, I need to visit your mother. Is that okay?" The elderly woman, who had been listening, stepped forward warily. "Who are you? And what do you want with my daughter?" Robert introduced himself again, briefly explaining his connection to Sarah. Mrs. Robinson's expression flickered between surprise and suspicion. "My daughter never told me about this," she finally said. "Mommy and Grandma don't talk much." Olivia chimed in with the blunt honesty of children, earning a scolding look from Jessica and a heavy sigh from Mrs. Robinson. "It's a long story," the older woman explained. "We had disagreements when the girls were born." The businessman realized he wasn't just facing a health crisis, but a complicated family puzzle. Still, his priority was clear: find Sarah and offer help. "Can we go to the hospital now?" he asked. "I'd really like to see her." Jessica and Mrs. Robinson exchanged glances, a rare moment of agreement. "I'll take the girls home," the grandmother offered. "And I can go with Mr. Anderson to the hospital," Jessica agreed. "But I should warn you, Sarah is very weak. She might not even recognize you." Robert nodded, his chest tightening. The woman who had saved his life years ago was now fighting for her own, and her daughters were willing to sacrifice their most precious possessions to help her. In the car on the way to Mercy Hospital, Robert listened as Jessica shared more details. Sarah, at 32, had been diagnosed with a rare cardiomyopathy that had worsened rapidly in recent months. The most promising treatment was experimental and would cost about $70,000 for the initial cycle, an impossible sum for a single mother, supporting 3 daughters on a nurse's salary. "And the girl's father?" Robert asked, trying to piece everything together. "Michael?" Jessica let out a bitter laugh. "He vanished before the girls were even born. Sarah found out she was pregnant with triplets, and he just lost it. Said he couldn't handle raising 3 kids. Haven't heard from him since." Robert shook his head, disgusted. "And yet she kept going." "My sister was always the strong one in the family," Jessica confirmed, staring out the window. "She worked up until her 8th month of pregnancy. Went back when the girls were just 4 months old. Never complained, never asked anyone for money, not even our mother, who could have helped." Why the distance between her and her mother? Jessica hesitated, as if measuring how much of the family story she should share with a stranger. Mrs. Robinson never approved of pregnancy outside marriage. When Michael abandoned Sarah, instead of supporting her, my mother practically said, "I told you so." They barely spoke until 6 months ago, when Sarah's health worsened, and she allowed our mother to visit the granddaughters occasionally. When they arrived at the hospital, Robert felt a lump in his throat. Hospitals always made him anxious since his own incident, but now the feeling was different. He was about to reunite with someone who meant far more to him than she had ever imagined. In room 307, Sarah slept, connected to monitors, her fragile appearance a stark contrast to Robert's memory of the energetic nurse who had taken charge as he felt his heart failing. Her once long, vibrant hair was now short and dull. Her skin, pale. "She usually wakes up in the late afternoon," Jessica explained softly. "The medication makes her drowsy." Robert approached the bed, studying the face of the woman who, unknowingly, had completely changed the course of his life. "I can wait," he said, pulling up a chair. "I'm in no hurry." Jessica glanced at her watch. "I need to get back to the girls. Mrs. Robinson is getting more forgetful, and the triplets are too clever. They might escape again." "Go ahead," Robert assured her. "I'll stay here until she wakes up. I'll reach out afterward." When Jessica left, Robert finally allowed himself to fully absorb the situation. 5 years ago, he had been walking downtown when a sharp pain struck his chest. He collapsed on the sidewalk, and the last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the face of a woman in a lab coat saying firmly, "Hold on, I've got you." He woke up in the hospital 3 days later after emergency surgery. The doctors explained he'd suffered a sudden heart attack and was only alive thanks to the nurse who provided critical first aid before the ambulance arrived. He had tried to find her to thank her in person, but she never accepted any public or private recognition. That moment had changed Robert deeply. Divorced for 2 years at the time, childless and entirely focused on his career, the businessman reconsidered his priorities after the near-death experience. He created a foundation to support healthcare workers, improved working conditions in his companies, and most importantly, began valuing people over business. And now, by an incredible coincidence, or was it fate, the daughters of the woman who had saved his life were trying to sell their dolls to save their mother. Who are you?" Sarah's weak voice interrupted his thoughts. Robert turned, meeting the nurse's confused brown eyes. "Hello, Sarah. My name is Robert Anderson. We met 5 years ago when you saved my life during a heart attack on the street." Her expression shifted from confusion to surprise. "The man at the mall?" she murmured, trying to adjust in bed. "Yes," Robert smiled, moved that she remembered. "I tried to find you afterward, but you never wanted to see me." Sarah closed her eyes briefly, as if gathering strength. "I was just doing my job. No thanks were needed." "Well, Fate seems to have other ideas, he remarked. I met your daughters today trying to sell their dolls to buy your medicine. Sarah's eyes widened in alarm. What? Where are my daughters? Did they go out alone? Easy, they're fine, he quickly explained. Your mother and sister took them home. They're extraordinary kids, Sarah. Identical in looks, but I could tell their personalities were quite different after just a few minutes of talking. A faint smile brightened the nurse's tired face. They are my life, she said simply, and they would do anything for you, even part with the dolls they clearly adore. A tear escaped from the corner of Sarah's eye. I gave them those dolls on their 3rd birthday. I saved up for months, she explained, her voice trembling. They're the only dolls they have. Robert felt a tightness in his chest. Sarah, I'd like to help. Your case. It seems like we need to find a way to balance things out. You saved my life when I needed it most without asking for anything in return. Now it's my turn. The nurse stared at him with a mix of suspicion and hope. Why, you don't even know me. But I know the value of what you did for me. And today I met your daughters, saw their determination, the love they have for you, he replied sincerely. Let me pay for your treatment. It's not charity, it's gratitude. Sarah closed her eyes again, this time letting the tears flow freely. I don't know if I can accept something like this. Think of your daughters, Robert insisted gently. They were willing to give up their most precious toys for you. Don't you think you deserve to do everything you can to get better for them? Before Sarah could answer, the door to the room opened and Dr. Amanda, the cardiologist in charge of her case, entered with a clipboard in hand. Good afternoon, Sarah. How are you feeling today? She asked before noticing Robert's presence. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you had a visitor. This is Robert Anderson, Sarah introduced weakly. An acquaintance. The doctor's eyes widened as she recognized the businessman's name. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Anderson, she said, extending her hand. Robert shook the doctor's hand and then got straight to the point. Doctor, I'd like to know exactly what treatment Sarah needs and how much it costs. I intend to cover all expenses. The doctor and the patient exchanged surprised glances. Mr. Anderson, we're talking about a considerable amount, Dr. Amanda warned. Money isn't an issue, the businessman assured. What matters is giving Sarah the best possible treatment. She has 3 little girls waiting for her at home. The cardiologist nodded, impressed. In that case, I can prepare a full report with all the options. The experimental treatment I mentioned earlier is showing excellent results in similar cases abroad. Excellent, Robert agreed. In the meantime, I'd like to talk to Sarah about a few details. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. When the doctor left, Sarah stared at Robert with a complicated expression. Why are you doing this? The truth. Robert pulled the chair closer to the bed. When you saved me that day, I was at the lowest point in my life, he confessed. I had just gotten divorced, was working 16-hour days, cut off from friends and family. That heart attack was my body sounding the alarm, telling me I was on the wrong path. He paused, gathering his thoughts. During my recovery, I promised myself that if I got a second chance, I'd live differently. I founded a foundation to support healthcare workers, restructured my companies to prioritize employee well-being, reconnected with my family, and I always wanted to thank the person who made that second chance possible. Sarah watched him silently. But I never imagined we'd meet again like this, he continued. Your daughters are extraordinary, Sarah. Their determination, the purity of their love for you, it moved me deeply. I'm not doing this just out of gratitude, but because I believe the universe put me in the right place at the right time to give something good back. The nurse took a deep breath, visibly emotional. My daughters are my life, she repeated. Ever since I got the diagnosis, my only fear has been leaving them. They're already growing up without a father, and the thought that they might be left without, it won't happen, Robert interrupted firmly. We'll get you the best treatment and you'll recover. Those girls need their mother, and from what I saw today, they'd do anything for you. Sarah smiled through her tears. They've always been like that, you know. Even though they're so little, they have this special bond and an incredible sensitivity. Emily is the natural leader, always stepping up. Olivia is the sensible one thinking before she acts, And Ava, the quietest, watches everything with those big eyes before speaking up. I noticed that dynamic in the few minutes I talked to them, Robert agreed, smiling. It's fascinating how they look identical, but have such different personalities. For a moment, they fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts. "What? Is that about your mother?" Robert finally asked. "I sensed some tension when she showed up." Sarah sighed. "It's complicated. My mother never accepted my pregnancy outside of marriage. When Michael left after finding out it was triplets, she practically said I'd ruined my life. We went years barely speaking, until my condition got worse and Jessica thought it was time to bring her back into her granddaughters' lives at least. And did it work? Partly. She adores the girls, but there's still a wall between us. Some wounds are hard to heal." Sarah paused. "I think she feels guilty too. She could have helped me when I needed it most, but she chose judgment instead." Robert nodded in understanding. Maybe this is a chance to start over. Crises have a way of putting things in perspective. Before Sarah could respond, the door opened again and Jessica rushed in, her expression worried. "Sir, we have a problem," she announced before noticing her sister wasn't alone. "Oh, sorry for interrupting." "What happened?" Sarah asked, trying to sit up. Jessica hesitated, glancing sideways at Robert. "You can speak in front of him," Sarah assured her. "Michael showed up," Jessica finally blurted. "He's at the house now. Apparently someone posted online about the girls selling their dolls, and the story went viral. Somehow it reached him." Sarah's expression hardened instantly. "What does he want after 4 years?" "He says he wants to see his daughters. Mum is holding him off, but he's insisting he has rights." Robert watched the sisters exchange, sensing the rising tension. "We need a lawyer," Sarah said, rubbing her temples. "He never registered the girls, never paid child support, never even saw them. He can't just show up now, and I can." "Help with that too," Robert offered, surprising both women. "My company has an excellent legal department." Sarah studied him for a moment, as if weighing how much help she could accept from this man who just re-entered her life. "Why would you do that?" she asked bluntly. "Because it seems your ex only showed up once the story got attention," Robert replied honestly. "And from what I gather, he walked out on you and the girls before they were even born. It doesn't seem fair that now, when you're vulnerable, he'd try to take advantage." Jessica looked at Robert with newfound respect. "He's right, sir. You know the timing isn't a coincidence." Sarah closed her eyes briefly as if gathering strength. "All right," she finally agreed, "but I want to be clear. I'm not asking for any of this. If you truly want to help, I'll accept, but I don't want to feel indebted," Robert finished. "Believe me, the debt is still mine. You gave me a second chance at life, and that's priceless." Jessica watched the interaction with curiosity, sensing there was much more to the story than her sister had shared. "I need to go home and deal with Michael," she said, interrupting the moment. "What should I tell him?" "Tell him I'm sick, but don't go into details about the treatment or—" Sarah hesitated, glancing at Robert. "About any help we're receiving. And tell him he can't see the girls without my permission, and I don't give it." "I'll have my lawyer reach out today," Robert assured her, pulling his phone from his pocket. "He can come to your house to guide you on how to proceed." As Robert made the call, Jessica moved closer to the bed and whispered to her sister, "Who is he really, Sar? How come you never told us about him?" Sarah shrugged. "He was just a patient I helped once. I never thought it was important to mention. A millionaire patient who shows up out of nowhere, willing to pay for your treatment and offer legal support." Jessica raised her eyebrows skeptically. "Are you sure there's nothing more to this story?" "I'm sure," Sarah replied firmly. "And I don't want it to be seen that way. He's grateful for what I did, that's all." Robert ended the call and turned to the sisters. "My lawyer, Dr. Mitchell, will be at your house in an hour," he informed them. "He's a family law specialist and will help handle the situation as smoothly as possible." Jessica thanked him, and after hugging her sister tightly, left the room, leaving Sarah and Robert alone again. "Thank you," Sarah said sincerely. "Not just for the treatment, but for helping with this situation with Michael. It's more than I'd expect from anyone." Robert smiled. "Like I said, it's the least I can do. Now rest. Tomorrow we'll talk more about the next steps in your treatment." Meanwhile, at Sarah's house, the tension was palpable. Michael Davis, a tired-looking 36-year-old man, sat uncomfortably on the living room couch as Mrs. Robinson stared at him with clear disdain. "You have the nerve to show up after 4 years," the older woman said, keeping her voice low so the children playing in the bedroom wouldn't hear. "I have rights," Michael replied defensively. "They're my daughters." "Too? Daughters you abandoned before they were even born," Mrs. Robinson shot back bitterly. "Daughters whose birth you couldn't even be bothered to register." Michael looked away, visibly uneasy. "I made mistakes, I admit, but when I saw the news, when I found out Sarah was sick and the girls were selling toys to help, I felt I had to do something." "What a coincidence that your conscience woke up just as the story went viral on social media," Mrs. Robinson remarked acidly. Before Michael could respond, the bedroom door opened and the 3 girls appeared, curious to see who was in the living room. They stood in the doorway staring at the stranger with identical wary expressions. "Is that them?" Michael asked, his voice suddenly thick. "Are they my daughters?" Mrs. Robinson didn't answer, watching her granddaughter's reactions instead. "Who are you?" Emily asked, stepping forward, taking her usual role as the sisters' spokesperson. Michael swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. For a fleeting moment he considered telling the truth, but Mrs. Robinson's stern gaze made him reconsider. "I'm a family friend," he answered vaguely. "Did you come to help Mommy?" Olivia asked, ever practical. Yes, in a way," Michael stammered, clearly uncomfortable. Ava, the most observant of the 3, stayed slightly behind her sisters, studying the man with sharp, distrustful eyes. "Girls, go back to your room, please," Mrs. Robinson requested. "You're already leaving." "But I just got here," protested Michael. "I have the right to meet my—" "Not here, not now," the woman interrupted firmly. "Not without Sarah's permission." At that moment, Jessica entered the house, visibly tense upon seeing Michael still present. The girls ran to their aunt. "Aunt Jessica, is Mommy going to be okay?" Emily asked anxiously. Jessica crouched down to their level with a reassuring smile. "Yes, sweetheart. She's getting special treatment and will be home soon." "Is the rich man going to help?" Olivia asked, surprising everyone. Jessica hesitated, glancing briefly at Michael, who seemed puzzled by the mention of the rich man. "What rich man?" he asked. "The handsome man in fancy clothes who talked to us in the park," Emily explained innocently. "He said he'd help Mommy so we wouldn't have to sell our dolls." Michael frowned, looking at Jessica for an explanation. "Their friend is helping with Sarah's treatment," she said vaguely. "Now, girls, why don't you go play for a bit while I talk to our visitor?" The children nodded and returned to their room, though not before Ava cast one last curious glance at Michael. Once the girls were gone, Michael stood up, visibly unsettled. "What's this about a rich man? Who's paying for Sarah's treatment?" "That's none of your concern," Jessica replied coldly. "You gave up any rights to this family when you left my sister pregnant with triplets. She never reached out for help," Michael defended himself. "Did she need to?" Mrs. Robinson interjected. "A real man doesn't wait to be called to fulfill his responsibilities." Michael ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Look, so I know I messed up. But when I saw that story about the girls selling their dolls, something woke up in me. They're my daughters. I have the right to know them, to be part of their lives." Jessica eyed him skeptically. Funny how this awakening happened just as the story gained attention. "What are you implying?" Michael asked defensively. "That maybe your sudden interest has more to do with opportunism than belated fatherhood," Jessica shot back. "And I should let you know a lawyer is on his way to ensure Sarah and the girls' rights are protected." The mention of a lawyer seemed to unsettle Michael momentarily. "We don't need lawyers involved. We're adults. We can talk this out civilly." "A lawyer is exactly what we need," Mrs. Robinson countered, "especially given your track record." Before Michael could respond, the doorbell rang. Jessica answered to find a middle-aged man in formal attire, holding a briefcase. "Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Paul Mitchell, the attorney sent by Mr. Robert Anderson. You must be Jessica?" Michael, listening from the living room, quickly approached. "Robert Anderson? The businessman?" he asked, his tone a mix of surprise and something else, perhaps calculation. The lawyer gave Michael a neutral look. "And you are?" "Michael Davis. I'm the triplets' father," he replied, extending his hand, which the lawyer shook briefly. Dr. Paul entered the house and, after formal introductions, asked to speak privately with Jessica and Mrs. Robinson. Michael, displeased, insisted on staying. "As the biological father, I have the right to be part of any discussion involving my children." The lawyer adjusted his glasses calmly. "Mr. Davis, I understand your position, but I must inform you that based on the information I've received, you have no legal recognition of paternity. The children aren't registered under your name, and there's no record of financial support or presence in their lives. This significantly weakens any immediate claim to parental rights." Michael paled. "But I'm their biological father. Doesn't that count?" "It's certainly relevant, but the court considers multiple factors when determining the children's best interests. Abandonment, lack of financial support, and absence of an established relationship all weigh against you," the lawyer explained calmly and professionally. "I suggest that if you truly want to build a relationship with your daughters, you do so. By respecting their mother's time and conditions, she holds legal custody." Michael grew increasingly uncomfortable. "And what about this Robert Anderson? What's his interest in all this?" The lawyer maintained a neutral expression. "My client is simply offering support to a family in need. His motivation is personal and legitimate." "How convenient," Michael muttered. "A wealthy businessman appears out of nowhere to help a vulnerable single mother with 3 young daughters." Jessica stepped forward, indignant. "Don't you dare imply anything. Robert is helping Sarah because she saved his life years ago. It's gratitude, something you'd never understand." The revelation seemed to catch Michael off guard. "Saved his life? How?" "Sarah is a nurse, in case you've forgotten," Mrs. Robinson replied sarcastically. "She gave him first aid when he had a heart attack on the street 5 years ago." Michael fell silent, absorbing the information and clearly reassessing his approach. "Even so, I want to see my daughters," he insisted, though less confrontationally. "I have that right." The lawyer intervened again. "As I said, the wisest course would be to respect Mrs. Sarah's delicate health situation. I can mediate a conversation between you when she's in better condition, and then discuss possible arrangements for supervised visits, if she agrees." Michael seemed ready to protest, but something in the lawyer's firm tone made him reconsider. "Fine," he conceded finally, "but I won't give up. They're my daughters too." After more tense discussions, Michael finally left, promising to return with his own lawyer. Dr. Paul stayed behind to advise Jessica and Mrs. Robinson on legal steps to protect Sarah and the children's interests. "Mr. Anderson has instructed me to provide full legal support for any family-related matters," he explained. "He's genuinely committed to helping." "Why so much interest?" Mrs. Robinson asked, still suspicious. "No one does this much for strangers without some hidden motive." The lawyer smiled slightly. "I've known Robert for many years. The incident your daughter was part of changed his life profoundly. After the heart attack, he transformed not just his health, but his values and priorities. The foundation he created for healthcare workers has already helped hundreds." Mrs. Robinson seemed slightly appeased but remained guarded. Jessica, however, felt genuinely grateful for the timely intervention. In the following days, as Sarah began specialized treatment, funded by Robert, a routine settled in. The businessman visited the hospital daily, often bringing small gifts for the triplets, who greeted him with growing affection. The girls, especially Emily, began eagerly awaiting his visits. "Uncle Robert, will Mommy be able to come home after?" "The new medicine?" the little girl asked during one hospital visit. Robert smiled, charmed by her spontaneity. "If all goes well, in a few weeks your mother can go home to continue treatment there," he explained patiently. "And what about the man who says he's our dad?" Olivia asked, surprising everyone. "Is he going to live with us?" An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Sarah, who was feeling better that day, exchanged worried glances with Jessica. "Who told you that?" Sarah asked gently. "We heard Grandma talking to Aunt Jessica," confessed Ava, speaking for the first time in Robert's presence. He said he's our father, but Grandma said a father isn't just the one who makes you, it's the one who raises you. Sarah sighed, giving her mother and sister a disapproving look. Girls, sometimes adults talk about complicated things that kids don't need to worry about, she tried to explain. What matters is that you're safe and loved, and soon we'll all be together. At home. The triplets seemed to accept the explanation, but Olivia's sharp gaze suggested the matter wasn't completely settled for her. Robert watched the family interaction with interest. Over the past few days, he had gotten to know not just Sarah, but her entire small family, and he felt increasingly drawn to them. The triplets, with their distinct personalities and irresistible charm, had carved out a special place in his heart. "We need to talk about Michael," Sarah said to Jessica once. The children left the room with Robert to buy ice cream at the hospital cafeteria. "Is he still insisting?" Jessica nodded. "He's called 3 times this week. Dr. Paul is handling it, but he seems determined." "What does he really want, Jessica?" Sarah asked, concerned. "He was never interested in the girls before. Why now?" Mrs. Robinson, who had been silent in the corner of the room, spoke up. "Isn't it obvious? He smells money. Somehow he must have found out about the businessman's help and is trying to take advantage." Sarah closed her eyes, exhausted. "Mom, not everything is about money. Maybe he really regrets it." "After 4 years?" the older woman questioned skeptically. "Right when a wealthy man enters the picture? Sarah, you've always been too smart. For your own good, trusting people more than you should." Before the discussion could continue, Robert returned with the girls, each happily licking an ice cream cone. "Look, Mum, Uncle Robert bought us ice cream," exclaimed Emily, proudly showing off her chocolate cone. Sarah smiled, grateful for the distraction that eased the tension. "Just don't make too much of a mess, okay?" As the children enjoyed their treats, Robert approached the bed. "I have good news," he said quietly. "I spoke with Dr. Amanda while we were out. The tests show you're responding well to the initial treatment. She's optimistic." Sarah's face lit up with genuine hope for the first time in weeks. "Really? You're not just saying that to cheer me up?" "I'd never lie about something so important," Robert assured her seriously. "There's still a long road ahead, but the early signs are positive." Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." Robert just smiled, moved by the raw emotion on the nurse's face. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said after a moment. "Why did you never remarry? Or have children?" The question caught Robert off guard. "Well," he began thoughtfully, "after the divorce I threw myself into work. When I had the heart attack, I realized I'd wasted years on things that didn't really matter. But ironically, during my recovery, I ended up focusing on other things, the foundation, restructuring my companies. I guess I let my personal life take a back seat again, just for different reasons." Sarah studied him curiously. "And you don't miss it? Having a family?" Robert looked at the triplets, who were chatting excitedly with Jessica while trying not to let their ice cream melt. "Sometimes," he admitted, "especially seeing you all. Even with all the difficulties, there's so much love here." Sarah followed his gaze, watching her daughters. "They're my greatest blessing. Even on the hardest days when money was tight and I had to work double shifts, just looking at them gave me the strength to keep going." At that moment, Emily approached, her face partially smeared with chocolate. "Mommy, can I show Uncle Robert my doll?" she asked, holding up the doll she never let go of. "Of course, sweetheart," Sarah agreed. The little girl proudly extended the doll to Robert. "This is Lucy," she announced solemnly. "She's my best friend and protects me from monsters at night." Robert took the doll carefully, noticing the wear that hinted at years of faithful companionship. "Pleased to meet you, Lucy," he said seriously, making Emily giggle with delight. "You're doing an excellent job protecting Em from monsters." The other 2 girls, seeing the interaction, came closer to introduce their dolls as well. Olivia presented Chloe, while Ava shyly showed Lily. "These are very special dolls," Robert remarked, handing Lucy back to Emily. "Mommy gave them to us on our 3rd birthday," Olivia explained. "She said she picked each one thinking of us." Sarah smiled at the memory. "I saved for months to buy those dolls. I wanted them to be special." "And they are," Robert confirmed, touched by the story. The moment was interrupted when Dr. Amanda entered the room for her afternoon rounds. After examining Sarah and reviewing the latest results, the doctor seemed pleased. "I'm impressed with how well you're responding to treatment, Sarah," she said. "If you keep this up, in 2 weeks we can consider discharging you to continue recovering at home." The news was met with joy by everyone. The triplets jumped. With excitement, Jessica and Mrs. Robinson exchanged relieved glances, and Robert felt a wave of satisfaction seeing renewed hope in Sarah's eyes. However, the happiness was briefly shaken when, later that day, Michael showed up at the hospital accompanied by his own lawyer, demanding to see Sarah and the girls. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like, and especially, subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. "He can't come in," Jessica insisted, blocking the door to the room. "Sarah isn't in any condition to handle additional stress." Michael's lawyer, a thin man with a stern expression, stepped forward. "My client has legitimate rights as the biological father. We're here in the spirit of reconciliation, but if necessary, we'll pursue legal measures." Robert, who was present, intervened calmly. "Gentlemen, this is a hospital. Mrs. Sarah is undergoing delicate treatment, and the children aren't here right now. I suggest we schedule a more appropriate meeting with all lawyers present to discuss this matter civilly." Michael's lawyer hesitated, clearly not expecting Robert's presence. "And you are?" "Robert Anderson, a family friend," he replied simply. "I'm funding Sarah's treatment in return for her saving my life years ago." Michael, who had been standing slightly behind his lawyer, stepped forward, staring at Robert. "I understand your gratitude, Mr. Anderson, but this is a family matter. I have the right to see my daughters and be involved in decisions about their well-being." "Right?" Jessica repeated sarcastically. "What right does a man have who abandoned a woman pregnant with triplets and disappeared for 4 years?" Robert raised a hand in a calming gesture. "Let's all take a breath. Dr. Paul is on his way, and we can discuss this in a proper room, not in a hospital hallway." As if summoned by Robert's words, Dr. Paul appeared, walking briskly down the hallway. After brief introductions, the 4 men headed to the private waiting room at the end of the corridor, leaving Jessica to inform Sarah about the developments. "What does he really want?" Robert asked bluntly as soon as the door closed behind them. Michael seemed offended by the question. "I want to meet my daughters. I want to be part of their lives." "After 4 years of absence?" Robert questioned. "Coincidentally, just as their story gains visibility and financial support comes in?" "It's not fair to judge me for past mistakes," Michael defended himself. "People change. They grow. Seeing those girls in the news report trying to sell their dolls, it got to me." Robert studied the man before him. Was there sincerity in his words, or was he just a skilled opportunist? It was hard to tell. Regardless of motives, Michael's lawyer interjected, "My client has legal rights as the biological father. We're willing to formalize paternity and establish a visitation agreement that respects the mother's health condition." Dr. Paul adjusted his glasses methodically. "I understand your client's position, counselor. However, I must emphasize that the law considers the children's best interests as the top priority. Having been absent their entire lives, a sudden approach could be disruptive for them, especially during this delicate time for the family." The discussion continued for nearly an hour, with both sides presenting arguments. Robert, mostly observing, noticed how Michael alternated between apparent emotional sincerity and pragmatic calculation. There was something about the man's demeanor that raised his suspicions. Finally, they reached a preliminary agreement. Michael could have a brief, supervised meeting with the triplets, provided Sarah approved and was present. Any future arrangements would depend on this first contact and the children's reactions. When they returned to the room, they found Sarah more alert, sitting up in bed. Jessica had already informed her about the situation. "I want to talk to him," Sarah said unexpectedly. "Alone." Robert and Jessica exchanged worried glances. "Are you sure?" Jessica asked. "You don't have to do this now." "Yes, I do," Sarah insisted. It's long past time we handled this like adults. Reluctantly, everyone left the room, leaving Sarah and Michael alone for the first time in over 4 years. Through the small window in the door, Robert could see them talking, their expressions serious and gestures restrained. After 20 minutes, Michael exited the room with a solemn expression. Sarah agreed to a supervised meeting, he announced. This weekend, if she's well enough. The lawyers finalized the details, and Michael left with his legal representative, not without casting an enigmatic look at Robert. "What did he say?" Jessica asked as soon as they re-entered Sarah's room. Sarah looked tired but determined. "We talked like we should have years ago," she replied simply. "He says he regrets it, that the news report made him realize what he was missing. I don't know if I fully believe him, but the girls have a right to know their biological father under supervision." "What if he tries for custody?" Mrs. Robinson, who had just arrived with the triplets, asked. "He promised that's not his intention," Sarah answered. "But even if he tries, he has no case. He abandoned them, never contributed financially, never showed up for any important moment. Any judge would see that." Robert watched the scene, admiring Sarah's strength. Even weakened by illness, she faced each challenge with dignity and clarity. "And the girls?" he asked quietly. "How do you plan to introduce him to them?" Sarah sighed, with honesty appropriate for their age. "I'll say he's the father who was away for a long time but wants to meet them now. I won't force a relationship, but I also won't stop them, if they want to." The weekend came quickly. Sarah had been granted temporary leave from the hospital, provided she returned by the end of the day. Robert offered his home for the meeting, a neutral, comfortable setting with a lovely garden where the children could play. The triplets, dressed in their best outfits, were excited about the novelty. Sarah had prepared them the night before, explaining simply that they would meet the father who had never been present but now wanted to be part of their lives. "Does he look like us?" Emily asked curiously. "A little," Sarah answered honestly. "You have the same shape to your eyes." "Why did he never come to see us before?" Olivia questioned, always the most direct. Sarah hesitated. "Sometimes adults make mistakes, take wrong turns. Your father wasn't ready to be a dad when you were born. And now he is," Ava asked softly. "That's what we're going to find out," Sarah replied, hugging all three. When Michael arrived at Robert's house, he was visibly nervous. He carried 3 identical gift boxes wrapped in colorful paper. "You didn't have to bring gifts," Sarah remarked as she welcomed him inside. "Though they don't expect that." "I wanted to," he replied simply. "Where are they?" "In the garden with Robert and Jessica. We can go now if you're ready." Michael nodded, clearly tense. When they stepped into the garden, the 3 girls were happily playing with a child-sized gardening set Robert had provided. Seeing Sarah with a stranger, they stopped immediately. "Girls," Sarah called gently. "This is Michael, the father we talked about yesterday." The triplets stared at the man with identical expressions of cautious curiosity. No one spoke for a few seconds, creating a tension so thick it was almost tangible. "Hi," Michael finally said, crouching to their level. It's nice to finally meet you. Your eyes are like ours," Olivia observed bluntly. Michael smiled nervously. "Yes, I suppose they are. I brought a little gift for each of you," he said, holding out the boxes. The girls glanced at Sarah for approval, and she gave a slight nod. Emily, always the first, took a box and opened it. Inside was a delicate child's bracelet with a heart charm. The other 2 received identical gifts. "They're pretty," Emily thanked politely, though without much enthusiasm. "I thought you might wear them on special occasions," Michael explained anxiously. "Each one has your initial engraved on the heart. See?" Indeed, each bracelet had a different letter, E, O, and A. The girls examined the jewelry with mild interest, thanked him again, and an uncomfortable silence settled. "Do you like gardening?" Michael asked, trying to start a conversation as he noticed the toy tools. "Uncle Robert gave them to us," Ava answered, surprising everyone by taking the lead. "We're planting flowers to bring to Mommy at the hospital." Michael shot a quick glance at Robert, who was watching from a distance. "That's very kind of him," he remarked with a hint of discomfort. You like him a lot, don't you? He saved Mommy, Emily said with childlike simplicity. Just like Mommy saved him before. The conversation continued hesitantly for a while. Though polite, the girls kept an emotional distance, neither rejecting him nor showing the enthusiasm Michael clearly hoped for. After about an hour, Sarah noticed the triplets growing restless and suggested ending the visit. We can schedule another meeting in a few weeks, she offered, seeing the disappointment on Michael's face. This takes time, Michael nodded, resigned. Of course, I understand. It was nice meeting you girls. I hope we can see each other again soon. When Michael left, the triplets seemed relieved, quickly returning to their games with Robert, who had kept a discreet distance during the meeting. How are you? He asked Sarah, noticing her exhaustion. Physically drained, emotionally confused, she admitted. Seeing Michael with the girls was surreal. For years, I imagined this moment, and now that it's happened, I'm not sure how to feel. Robert nodded understandingly. I think he was genuinely nervous, he remarked. If it's any comfort, he seemed sincere in wanting to know them. Sarah gave a half smile. I noticed that too. What worries me is what comes next. Parenthood isn't about special moments and pretty gifts. It's about routine, responsibility, daily commitment. I don't know if he's ready for that. The girls seem to be handling it well, Robert observed, watching them play carefree. Kids are surprisingly resilient, Sarah agreed, but they're also sensitive to change. I don't want them to get attached to him only to be abandoned again. Robert gently squeezed Sarah's hand in a gesture of support. One step at a time, he suggested. For today, it was a good start. In the following weeks, Sarah's treatment continued to progress positively. After nearly a month in the hospital, she was finally discharged to continue her recovery at home, with periodic checkups at the hospital. The homecoming was celebrated with a small party organized by the triplets with help from Jessica and Robert. The house was decorated with the girls' drawings, and a homemade cake waited on the kitchen table. Welcome back, my love, said Mrs. Robinson, hugging her daughter with tears in her eyes. The difficult period had brought mother and daughter closer, beginning to heal old wounds. Sarah, still weak but visibly happy to be home, hugged her daughters emotionally. I missed you so much, my little ones. Now you're going to get better. Right, Mommy? Asked Emily, her eyes full of hope. I will, sweetheart. The treatment is working, and I'm feeling better every day. Robert watched the scene with a full heart. Over the past weeks, he had become deeply involved with the family, forming bonds that went beyond initial gratitude. The triplets had completely won him over, and his admiration for Sarah grew with every display of her strength and dignity. Michael had continued his supervised visits, now at home, once a week. The girls were beginning to get used to his presence, though they still treated him with the natural reserve reserved for a new adult in their lives. He seemed genuinely eager to build a relationship, though he sometimes showed impatience with the slow pace of their growing closeness. They should be more comfortable with me by now, he said in frustration after a particularly quiet visit. It's been almost 2 months. It's 4 years to make up for, Michael, Sarah reminded him patiently. You can't expect them to accept you as their father overnight. This complex family dynamic continued to evolve slowly. Sarah regained her strength gradually, even beginning to consider a partial return to work in a few months. The treatment was expensive and lengthy, but Robert had assured her all costs would be covered, allowing her to focus solely on her recovery. One sunny Saturday afternoon, while the triplets played in the small backyard under Jessica's supervision, Robert made an unexpected visit. He carried 3 small, colorful boxes. What's this? Sarah asked curiously. Remember when the girls tried to sell their dolls to pay for your treatment? That scene never left my mind, explained Robert. So I had an idea. He called the triplets, who came running, as excited as always by his presence. I brought something special for you, he announced, handing each of them a box. It's to go with your dolls. The girls opened the boxes at the same time, revealing 3 miniature stethoscopes, perfectly sized for the dolls. Now your dolls can be nurses too, just like your mom, Robert explained, moved by the joy on the little ones' faces. We can take care of everyone now, Emily exclaimed enthusiastically. already placing the tiny instrument on her doll. "Thank you, Uncle Robert," Olivia thanked formally, while Ava simply smiled shyly, her eyes shining with happiness. Sarah watched the scene with her heart overflowing with emotion. At that moment, she realized how drastically her life had changed in just a few months. From the despair of the initial diagnosis to the current hope of recovery, from the isolation of being a single mother to the unexpected support that had emerged, from suffocating financial struggles to the stability provided by Robert's generosity. Later, when the children went back to playing, Sarah and Robert sat on the small porch, watching the sunset. "Thank you for everything you've done for us," she said sincerely. "Not just for the treatment, but for bringing so much joy to the girls during this difficult time." Robert smiled. "They've brought far more joy into my life than I could ever repay. You know, my house was always too big, too quiet. Over the last few months, I've realized how much was missing." Sarah studied him carefully. "Have you ever thought about rebuilding your life, getting married again, having children?" "I have, but I never found the right person, or maybe I wasn't really looking," he admitted. "After the heart attack, I was so focused on giving meaning to my second chance that I forgot to truly live it to the fullest." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the distant laughter of the triplets. "What about Michael?" Robert finally asked. "How are things between you two?" Sarah sighed. "Complicated. He's trying with the girls. I'll give him that. But sometimes I feel there's more to his sudden reappearance than just paternal regret." "How so?" "I'm not sure," she confessed. "Just a feeling. During his last visit, he asked a lot of questions about the treatment, the costs, how much you're involved financially. He seemed more interested in that than in actually getting to know the girls." Robert frowned, concerned. "Do you think he has ulterior motives?" "I hope not," Sarah replied. "For now, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. The important thing is the girls are protected, and Dr. Paul assured me we're legally in a strong position." The conversation was interrupted by Jessica's arrival, who seemed agitated. "Sir, we need to talk," she said urgently. "I just got a call you need to hear." Robert offered to stay with the children while the sisters talked inside the house. When Sarah returned to the porch, her expression had completely changed. "What happened?" Robert asked, worried. "A colleague from the hospital," Sarah answered, still processing the information. "She said Michael approached her asking about my medical condition, the treatment, and especially about you. He introduced himself as my husband." Robert stood up, alarmed. "This is serious, Sarah. We need to tell Dr. Paul immediately." "I already did," she assured him. "But honestly, I don't know what Michael is after. What kind of game is he playing?" The answer came 2 days later, when Dr. Paul appeared with a grave expression, carrying documents Michael had filed in court. "He's requesting shared custody of the children," the lawyer explained, showing the papers. "And what's more concerning, he's insinuating that Sarah's relationship with Mr. Anderson could be harmful to the girls." "What?" Sarah exclaimed, incredulous. "That's outrageous. Robert has been nothing short of an angel to our family." "Unfortunately, he's trying to paint a picture of financial dependence, suggesting there might be ulterior motives, Doctor," Paul explained uncomfortably. "He's also questioning Sarah's ability to care for the children due to her health condition." Robert remained silent, processing the information with growing indignation. "This is a low blow," he finally said. Using Sarah's illness against her, after all the suffering she's already been through." Dr. Paul adjusted his glasses methodically. "I believe we can easily counter all these claims. We have medical records showing Sarah's consistent improvement, as well as witnesses to Michael's prior abandonment. However, we need to be prepared for a potentially draining legal battle." "The girls can't go through this," Sarah said, distressed. "They were finally getting used to his presence, and now this." "Unfortunately, the supervised visits will have to be suspended until the preliminary hearing," the lawyer informed. "But don't worry, we have a strong case." After the lawyer left, Robert and Sarah sat in the living room, both shaken by the news. "I'm so sorry for dragging you into all this," Sarah said, guilt-ridden. "You only wanted to help, and now you're being pulled into this family drama." Robert took her hands in his. "Don't you dare apologize," he said firmly. "I'm here because I want to be. I won't abandon you when you need support the most." Sarah felt her eyes welling up. "Why? Why do you care so much about us?" Robert hesitated, searching for the right words. "At first it was gratitude. Then I met the triplets, got to know the real you, and something changed. You've become important to me. A part of my life I didn't realize was missing." The look they exchanged in that moment was filled with unspoken emotions, interrupted only by the arrival of the triplets, who came running into the room. "Mom, we want to show Uncle Robert our surprise," Emily exclaimed, tugging at Sarah's hand. The girls had prepared a little talent show with rehearsed songs and drawings made especially for Robert. The impromptu performance brought lightness to a day that had been weighed down with worries. In the weeks that followed, as they prepared their legal defense, Sarah continued to improve physically. The experimental treatment showed promising results, and the doctors were optimistic about a full recovery, though the road ahead was still long. Michael, meanwhile, launched a subtle but effective PR campaign. He began appearing at community events, portraying himself as a devoted father fighting for the right to be with his daughters. His twisted version of events, of a father, kept from seeing his own children by the influence of a wealthy businessman, began winning sympathizers. "I can't believe he's doing this," Jessica said indignantly, showing Sarah a social media post where Michael appeared with an old photo of Sarah pregnant, captioned with an emotional plea about fighting to reunite his family. "He never cared about them before," murmured Mrs. Robinson, who now spent more time at her daughter's house helping with daily life. "He only showed up when he smelled money." The situation reached a critical point when, on a Sunday morning, Sarah was surprised by a reporter from a local newspaper at her doorstep, asking for her side of the heartwarming story of a father fighting for custody of his daughters. "No comment," Sarah said firmly, closing the door, shaking with anger and frustration. Robert, upon hearing about the incident, immediately called his public relations team to contain the damage, but some harm had already been done. The story was starting to spread, distorted and sensationalized. "This has to stop," Sarah said, determined. "I won't let him turn our private life into a public circus." That's when Robert had an idea. "What if we face this head-on?" he suggested. "Not with public statements or rebuttals, but by offering Michael what he really wants." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, confused. "I think deep down it's not the girls he wants," Robert explained. "It's money. If we offer a financial settlement, on the condition that he drops the custody claim and maintains a respectful relationship with the girls, maybe we can resolve this without further trauma." Sarah fell silent, considering the proposal. "I don't like the idea of buying peace," she finally admitted. "But if it's to protect the girls from a draining legal battle, it might be the best option." Dr. Paul was consulted, and after weighing all aspects, agreed that direct negotiation could be the least harmful path. A meeting was scheduled in his office, attended by Sarah, Robert, Michael, and their respective lawyers. "Before we begin any formal negotiation," Robert started, "I'd like to understand exactly what you hope to achieve with this lawsuit." Michael glanced at his lawyer, who gave a slight nod. "I want to be part of my daughters' lives," he replied with apparent sincerity. "I admit I was absent for a long time, but now I want to make up for it. Make up for it by abandoning them for 4 years and now exposing them publicly to a custody battle." Sarah questioned, struggling to contain her outrage. "I was trying to draw attention to my cause." Michael defended himself. "You have a billionaire backing you. I needed to level the playing field." Robert intervened before the discussion escalated. "Let's be direct here. Michael, if we could reach an agreement guaranteeing you regular scheduled visits with the girls without shared custody, would you consider dropping the lawsuit?" Michael hesitated, exchanging another glance with his lawyer. "What about my involvement in major decisions, education, healthcare?" "We can establish a consultation protocol for key decisions," Dr. Paul offered, "but primary custody would remain with the mother, who has raised the children alone since birth." "And would there be some kind of financial support to help with my relationship with them?" Michael asked, finally revealing part of his true motivations. "I want to provide nice things for my daughters, but my situation isn't the best." Robert and Sarah exchanged looks. There it was, however, thinly veiled. The real interest. We can discuss a reasonable financial agreement with funds deposited into accounts specifically for the girls' well-being, Robert proposed carefully. Accounts you could access for expenses solely related to them, like education, healthcare, or extracurricular activities. Michael's eyes briefly lit up. That would be acceptable, he replied, trying to mask his eagerness. But I'd need to know amounts, terms. The negotiation continued for several hours, with offers and counter-offers. In the end, they reached an agreement that seemed to satisfy all parties. Michael would withdraw the shared custody lawsuit and immediately cease any public exposure of the case. In return, he would receive supervised visits, gradually progressing to unsupervised ones if all went well, along with a specific financial fund for expenses related to the girls. There's one non-negotiable additional condition, Sarah added firmly. You must promise never to abandon them again. If you start these visits and raise their expectations, you can't just disappear when you grow tired. That would devastate them. Michael nodded solemnly. I made that mistake once. I won't do it again. The documents were prepared, reviewed, and signed the following week. The case, which had begun gaining public attention, vanished as quickly as it had appeared, to the relief of everyone involved. For the triplets, the only noticeable change was that visits from Uncle Michael, as they still called him, became more regular and structured. He seemed genuinely committed to building a relationship, though he sometimes showed impatience with the slow pace of their growing closeness. Meanwhile, Sarah's health continued to improve. 6 months after starting the experimental treatment, the doctors confirmed her illness was in remission, though she still needed ongoing care. It's almost a miracle, Dr. Amanda remarked during a follow-up appointment. Your response to the treatment has exceeded all our expectations. I had many reasons to fight, Sarah replied, emotional. 4 reasons, to be exact. The doctor smiled, understanding the reference to the triplets and Robert, whose constant presence in Sarah's life had become unmistakable. The relationship between Sarah and Robert had evolved naturally over the months. What began as mutual gratitude had deepened into friendship, and gradually, something more, though neither had yet put it into words. The girls are asking if you're coming for dinner tonight, Sarah mentioned over the phone one afternoon. Emily insists you promised to teach them a new board game. And she's right, Robert laughed. I'll be there at 7. Can I bring dessert? Only if it's that pudding the girls loved last time. The comfortable domesticity they had developed surprised them both. Robert, who had spent years focused solely on his career, now found joy in simple pleasures. Game nights with the triplets, Sunday walks in the park, and quiet conversations with Sarah after the girls had gone to bed. For Sarah, the transformation was just as profound. After years of struggling alone as a single mother, she found herself surrounded not only by the practical support Robert provided, but also by the emotional partnership that had gradually formed between them. One quiet evening, as the triplets slept, Sarah and Robert sat on the small porch gazing at the stars, a habit they had developed. At the hospital, when you showed up out of nowhere after so many years, I admit I doubted your intentions, Sarah confessed. Breaking a comfortable silence, Robert smiled. That was to be expected. A stranger appearing, offering help, it seemed too good to be true. And yet it was true, she said, meeting his gaze. You know what Jessica told me the other day? That you were the miracle the girls tried to buy when they put their dolls up for sale. Robert felt a lump in his throat. If there was any miracle, it was finding all of you, he replied sincerely. My life changed completely that day when I saw 3 little girls trying to sell their most precious dolls out of love for their mother. Sarah reached out, intertwining her fingers with his. The girls love you, she said softly. Emily asked yesterday if you could be their father, since Uncle Michael doesn't live with us. Robert felt his heart race. And what did you say? That some families are formed in different ways and what matters is love, she replied. But I confess the question kept echoing in my mind. He gently squeezed her hand. It's been echoing in mine too, ever since you mentioned it just now. Their eyes met, filled with unspoken possibilities. No words were needed to understand. What was happening between them? A feeling that had grown naturally without rush, built on a solid foundation of mutual respect and admiration. That night, there were no grand declarations or dramatic gestures, just the quiet certainty that together they had found something precious, a family built not by blood, but by daily choices of love and commitment. In the months that followed, life continued to evolve positively. Sarah returned to work part-time, now with a renewed purpose. Inspired by her own experience, she specialized in caring for patients with rare heart conditions, becoming a reference at the hospital. Robert, in turn, restructured his businesses to spend more time with Sarah and the triplets. Together, they created a foundation to help families with children whose parents faced serious medical conditions, a legacy born directly from the experience they had shared. Michael kept his part of the agreement, visiting the girls regularly. Over time, he built a genuine relationship with his daughters, though never as deep as the bond they developed with Robert. Eventually, he himself acknowledged this, accepting with surprising maturity the role Robert had taken in the children's lives. Mrs. Robinson, who had initially distrusted both Robert and Michael, became a strong ally, recognizing how the presence of both, each in their own way, enriched her granddaughters' lives. As for the triplets, they grew up happy and secure, surrounded by more love than their little hands had tried to buy that fateful day when they sold their dolls. The three still kept their precious cloth companions, now with tiny stethoscopes, always at the ready, symbols of the extraordinary journey that had transformed their lives. And the dolls? They were never sold, but they fulfilled a much greater mission than their little owners could have imagined when they set them out for sale on that sidewalk. They became the symbol of a love so pure and determined that it moved a heart and transformed not just one life, but an entire family. On a special afternoon, exactly 1 year after the day the triplets had tried to sell their dolls, the family gathered for a picnic in the park. While the girls played under the watchful eyes of Jessica and Mrs. Robinson, Robert took Sarah's hand. "I have an important question," he said, seriousness in his eyes. Sarah smiled, intrigued by his sudden formality. "I'm listening." Robert pulled a small box from his pocket. "I spent years building companies, achieving material success, but I never found what truly mattered until I met you and the girls. You taught me the real value of life," he said, opening the box to reveal a delicate engagement ring. "Sarah Williams, would you do me the honor of officially forming the family we've already built in our hearts?" With tears in her eyes, Sarah nodded. "Yes," she answered simply, as the triplets, who had sneaked closer upon sensing the special moment, burst into cheers of joy. Emily, always the most expressive, ran to hug Robert. "Now you'll really be our dad?" she asked, her big eyes fixed on Robert's face. Robert felt his heart overflow with emotion. He knelt down to be at eye level with the three girls, who, without him even realizing it, had become the center of his world. "If you'll have me, it would be the greatest honor of my life," he answered sincerely. Olivia, always the most practical, took a step forward. "We've already accepted you a long time ago," she declared, with the seriousness only a 5-year-old could muster. "We were just waiting for you to notice." Ava, the quietest of the three, timidly stepped closer and held out her doll to Robert. "Lucy, Chloe, and Lily want you to be their daddy too," she said softly, referring to the 3 dolls that had started this whole journey. Sarah watched the scene with her heart overflowing with love. Her life had taken so many turns over the past year, from the despair of illness to the hope of recovery, from the fear of leaving her daughters alone to the joy of seeing her family grow in unexpected ways. "I think that's a collective yes," she said, smiling through tears as Robert slid the ring onto her finger. Mrs. Robinson and Jessica stepped forward to congratulate the couple, both visibly moved. "Who would have thought," the older woman said, her voice trembling, "that those dolls for sale would bring so much happiness?" "It wasn't the dolls, Mom," Sarah gently corrected. "It was the girls' love, their determination to do anything to help." Robert wrapped his arms around the 4 women in his life, his bride and the 3 little girls who had won his heart with their courage and purity. "Sometimes in life," he said, gazing at the blue sky above them, "we have to lose something precious to find something even more valuable. 6 months later, in a simple ceremony in the garden of their new home, spacious enough to accommodate everyone comfortably but cozy enough to feel like a home, Sarah and Robert made their union official. The triplets, now 5 years old, were the flower girls, each carrying their inseparable dolls, now dressed in tiny party dresses that matched their own. To everyone's surprise, it was Ava, usually the most reserved, who stepped forward during the ring exchange. "Uncle Robert isn't just uncle anymore," she announced clearly, catching the guests off guard. "Now he's our daddy, because a daddy isn't just the one who makes you. It's the one who cares and loves you every day." Not a single dry eye remained after those words. Even Michael, who attended the ceremony and now maintained a cordial relationship with the family, discreetly wiped away a tear, recognizing the wisdom in his daughter's simple declaration. The celebration was simple but joyful, perfectly reflecting the family that was officially formed that day, a union built not out of obligation or convention, but through daily choices of love, respect, and devotion. Mrs. Robinson, who had initially resisted accepting Robert, had now become one of his biggest supporters. Sarah's illness had served as a catalyst to heal old wounds between mother and daughter, creating space for a renewed relationship based on mutual understanding. "I never thought I'd say this," she confided to Sarah during the reception, "but I think you've found a man who truly deserves you and my granddaughters." Jessica, who remained a constant and beloved presence in her nieces' lives, found in Robert not just a brother-in-law, but an ally and friend. As for Michael, he surprised everyone with his growth. After the legal conflict was resolved, he gradually took on a more mature role in his daughters' lives. Not as the primary father, he himself acknowledged that place now belonged to Robert, but as a present and positive figure. Over time, he developed a relationship of mutual respect with Robert, united by their shared commitment to the triplets' well-being. 1 year after the wedding, when the girls turned 6 and were about to start school, Sarah received the news that would complete her healing journey. She was officially in full remission. The experimental treatment had been an absolute success, and the doctors were optimistic about her full recovery. To celebrate this victory and the girl's birthday, Robert prepared a special surprise. With the help of local artisans, he created 3 small dollhouses, perfect replicas of the family's home, each customized to match the personality of one of the triplets. "So Lucy, Chloe, and Lily can also have a home," he explained, watching the girls' eyes light up with joy as they saw the gift. Sarah watched the scene with a full heart. The dolls her daughters had nearly sold to save her now had homes of their own, just as they themselves had found a safe and loving home. That night, after the girls finally fell asleep, exhausted from a day of celebration, Sarah and Robert sat on the porch as they had done so many times throughout their journey together. If someone had told me 2 years ago that that terrible day when I got my diagnosis would be the beginning of so much happiness, I would never have believed it, Sarah confessed, nestled in her husband's arms. Robert gently kissed the top of her head. "Sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as problems," he reflected. "When I saw 3 little girls trying to sell their most precious dolls to save their mother, something inside me changed forever." "You saved my life," Sarah said, looking into his eyes. "No," Robert corrected softly. "You saved mine. Twice. First when you kept my heart from stopping on that sidewalk, and then when you and the girls taught me what it truly means to live." Time continued to pass, bringing new challenges and joys. The triplets grew up healthy and happy, each developing their unique talents and personalities. Emily remained the natural leader, always at the forefront of initiatives. Olivia, the pragmatic one, excelled in studies and organization. And Ava, the sensitive observer, revealed herself as a talented artist. The foundation created by Sarah and Robert to help families with children whose parents faced serious medical conditions became a success, aiding hundreds of families in situations similar to their own. On a special afternoon, when the girls were already 10, the family visited the hospital where it had all begun. In the main lobby, an entire pediatric wing, fully funded by their family foundation, was inaugurated, named the Three Dolls Project, in honor of the little heroines who unknowingly had started it all. During the ceremony, the triplets, now articulate and confident preteens, surprised everyone by asking to speak. "When we were little," Emily began, "we tried to sell our dolls to help our mom get better. We didn't know we were doing anything special," Olivia continued. "We just wanted our mom back. But that day changed everything," Ava finished, her voice soft but firm. "It brought our dad into our lives and showed that sometimes, when we try to help one person, we end up helping many." In the front row, Sarah and Robert held each other's hands, tears in their eyes. Beside them, Mrs. Robinson, now a doting grandmother reconciled with her past, and Jessica, who remained a loving and present aunt, smiled with pride. And on a special shelf in the girls' room, 3 dolls, Lucy, Chloe, and Lily, remained as silent witnesses to an extraordinary journey. The same dolls that years earlier had nearly been sold out of love now symbolized a story of hope, healing, and the creation of a family united not by blood, but by daily choices of love and dedication. Because in the end, the most precious lesson everyone learned was that the true value of things lies not in their price, but in the love they represent, and that sometimes, in trying to save someone we love, we end up saving ourselves. End of story. Dear listener, if this story touched your heart as it did ours, share in the comments. Have you ever experienced or witnessed an act of love as pure as that of these triplets? Subscribe to the channel for more soul-warming stories that remind us of the transformative power of true love.